those of you who doesn't really know Beit Shapiro, Beit Shapiro, I think, is a very surprising organization. It is the largest NGO in Israel focusing on the field of disabilities, and not as other amazing organizations and NGOs, Beit Shapiro focuses on innovation. It's a 37 years old organization that is consistently trying to focus on unanswered needs and finding and developing services and products to answer those needs, model it, and spread the knowledge around the world. I think about 5 to 7 years ago, we've understood the power of technology. It's okay, can you hear me well? Yes. And we've established the Assistive Technology Center with professionals focusing on implementation and guidance of assistive technology. And we've developed the A3I Accelerator, which I'll tell you soon about. But first, as an economist, I will try with a few numbers because it will make us all feel more comfortable. People with disabilities. Today, people with disabilities are about 15% of the total population in the world. But the WHO, the World Health Organization, expects that by 2050, there will be about 2 billion people around the world. So that's an enormous market. What does it mean? Why didn't we hear about it more often? Maybe because there are many, many, many types of disabilities. I put here a few examples of the more common disabilities that we all know. But whereas there are so many different types of disabilities, the WHO, as I mentioned, they see it as 4 different types of subgroups around the world. So first of all is people with disabilities. The second is the elderly population. Thank you. Perfect. Okay. Works?
Yeah, works.
Okay. So the second is people with is the elderly. The third is the people with communication disease, and the fourth one is people with chronic disease. Why am I telling you this? Because when we're thinking about people with disabilities, we usually imagine the first thing that comes to our mind is as a person sits in a wheelchair, usually, or crutches, or something that we often see. But the problem is that there are so many kinds, so many types, so many different needs that makes this huge market very complex. Nevertheless, there are many different kinds of solutions. Few of them, I've chosen few Israeli solutions. Perhaps you know some of them. One of them is the Orcam glasses. Have you heard probably about Mobileye? Right. Yeah. So the company, so Orcam is by Mobileye. They developed glasses that can read. It's for the visually impaired and the blind. So it can read text. That can be amazing, you know, in supermarkets. It can read books. It can read signs on the streets. Maybe you also heard about Rewalk Robotics. Up and Ride today, they have a new, they've developed something new. And I don't know if you've heard about it, but Nava, I think you should, about Voice It and talk. Yeah, definitely. That's an app developed by a company called, a startup called Voice It for the speech impairment. So it identifies speech impairment and speak in your behalf. I've brought you these few examples to show you that there is one approach to target this huge market. This first approach is actually to use innovative technology and develop a product that focuses on a target population. So if here is the visually impaired and here is the speech impairment, each and every one of them is a kind of a small market worldwide. The other approach, perhaps I'll start with a question and then we talk about the other approach. I brought here 4 examples for you to guess. What do they all share in common? Do you have any idea? Any at all? So we all use it today. It's a basic feature of our cell phones and PCs. But initially it was developed for people with disabilities. So behind that slide is the assumption or this approach called universal design that I assume that in HIT I don't need to say much about. But universal design is another approach to target this huge and complex market, because instead of developing a specific product to a specific subgroup in this market, we can think in a different way. I'll soon show you one amazing example, graduate of our accelerator, that developed something that initially was targeting one focus group, but later on discovered that it might be relevant to a much bigger crowd. I mean, maybe the rest of the society as a whole. Here you can see this is an article that Eve Anderson from Google wrote, I think about a year ago. Yeah, I don't remember, but it was. I mean, we felt Google is a very good partner of Beit, Issie, Shapiro. We're doing many projects together, and we felt this article symbolizes the progress in the perception that actually accessibility issues, accessibility problems are an incentive, can lead to improvements in technology in general. She's focusing on robots, Google Maps, YouTube, you know, features of Google, but there are many other examples. So I want to discuss today, just very quickly, why these 2 approaches and so many innovations and technology that already exist, you know, with a huge market around it, why, if it's all there, we still have a great need, unanswered need. Why we're still very behind in the field of assistive technology. Why assistive technology isn't cyber or media, you know, or the rest of those developed ecosystem in Israel. The first and greatest challenge we've noticed in the last few years is funding. AT is not as sexy as cyber. And we know it very well, but it's not only the sexiness around it, it's more of an awareness issue and the understanding that AT, assistive technology, is something that we all use in one format or the other. But many other challenges around it, put aside funding. Funding is just one. The connection between the need and the innovation. So there's a bunch of technology sits there, and there's a great need of many, many subgroups around the world, but there's no connection. I mean, from our point of view, there are so many amazing minds developing amazing products, but they're hardly connected to the need of the end user. Okay, what I mean that there's a lot of overlaps, okay? And there are few fields that are more sexy than others, such as visually impairment. You would be amazed to find that there are only, I think, around 15,000 blind people in Israel. But I think the percentage of innovations and technology for the blind is enormous relatively to the disability market. So we understand there is not a lot of channels and connections between the innovators and the need. And another challenge would be the professionals. So assistive technology, not as apps and cyber and different other things that you just implement, you know, in your system. Assistive technology is something that is transferred through professionals, through the state, sometimes, through organizations, professional centers, rehabilitation centers, hospitals, and so on. And if the professionals doesn't know about technology, how would you, as the end user, you know, after a car accident, you would never know what is the right thing for you, you know, what is most innovative, how can you purchase it, how to implement it and adjust it to your own needs. And I mean, it's a long process. So many, many challenges in this field. We put ourselves as a target to address this ecosystem, and it's a global mission. We're not doing this alone. We're doing this with many, many, many partners. Some of them are technology companies such as Google, HP, Apple, SAP that develop products in the field of different apps for kids with special needs. We're working with investors, different VCs that are interested in the AT market, but still a bit scared, you know, to put their foot in because it's understood. I mean, it's a hard market and it's a high risk, and they need to justify, you know, every decision they have with their own investors. But we're working with the field, with people with disabilities. There is a saying says, nothing about us without us. Okay, so when you develop something, the idea would be to take the innovator, the entrepreneur, you know, the developer, to put him in the same room with people with disabilities, you know, the same disabilities that he's addressing. I'll show you a few examples of how we do it. One is applicable program developed together with Google last year. This program was made for making apps more accessible. So what we've done was to take, for 3 days, the best mentors in Google, together with developers from the leading apps such as Move It and Fiverr and Waze, put them together in a room, first make them aware about this 15%, you know, of the market that today is struggling to use their apps. And second of all, guide them how to make their apps more accessible. And sometimes it's just a small feature, you know, make the buttons bigger, not using slide but tap because it's harder to focus. I mean, there are so many simple things that sometimes because you didn't think about them, I mean, you just miss a bunch of people. And this program was amazing. It's got an impact. Some of the changes you can see them today in the Move It app and Fiverr. And there's also a guiding book available for anyone who's interested. Another example, it's not exactly an example, but more of a program, A3I Accelerator. We've established it 3 years ago together with partners, Present Tense, the Ruderman Foundation, and the LA Federation. I know in Israel we are very full of accelerator programs. I think we have more than 100. But you'll be surprised that in the AT field, we have only one, and it was the first in the world. I mean, we were surprised. But it was very important because this program wasn't focusing only on the entrepreneurial process of a venture. It was about more than 50% is focusing on the professional side, on making the right connections to the ecosystem, to the field, to the people with disabilities, the users, on constructing pilots for the ventures, you know, to try their POC on the relevant people. It's not enough that you know someone, you know, from your family, or it's only you that have the disability, or that you collected through Facebook, you know, 3 or 4 people that were willing to try your app or your product. There are ways to examine your product, and we understood that in the current ecosystem, this was one of the greatest challenges that entrepreneurs found. Put aside money, of course. So the accelerator is a 4 to 5 month program. We take about 10 to 15 ventures in a very early stage. Sometimes they come with a robust concept, but sometimes with a POC. They all focus on people with disabilities, the elderly. They all want to make an improvement in the quality of life, okay? But they focus on AT. AT, for those, I was just thinking that I should have said it in the beginning, but assistive technology is a huge umbrella term. It consists of innovative technologies, apps, innovative concepts that combine different existing technologies. It encompasses also innovative services that use technologies, databases, web, online platforms, everything that involves with improving the quality of life with people with disabilities. So in our accelerator, we actually have a very varied mix of ventures. So I chose 3 of them, 3 successful graduates that I wanted to use to show you the differentiation between the solutions. First is Sesame Enable. Perhaps you've heard of it. He's a graduate of our first cohort. Oded Bendov, the entrepreneur, he developed a TouchFree Smartphone.
קוראים לי לוי גבריאל, לא מתפקד לא בידיים ולא ברגליים, והראש עוד עובד.
שמי אהרון קנובלוך, אני חולה ALS, פירוש הדבר שיש לי ירידה בפונקציה של כל שרירי הגוף.
אני מריה, ואני מעזה, ואני בת 14 וחצי, ועכשיו אני גרה בישראל עם אבא שלי ואח שלי.
אני מתפלל איתו, לדבר בטלפון איתו, קצת גולש באינטרנט, כל מה שאנשים רגילים פחות או יותר עושים.
אני יכולה להדליק אותו לבד, ולענות לבד, ולשחק בו לבד. הרבה דברים שאני יכולה לעשות אותו לבד, שלא יכולתי לעשות אותו לבד.
התקשרתי לחבר, דיברתי איתו, אולי 15 שנה לא התקשרתי לאנשים.
אני יכול להיכנס לבנק, להפקיד צ'קים, אני עוד מחפש להקטין את האוברדרפט איתו, זה עוד לא גיליתי.
אני היום יכולה לדבר עם המשפחה שלי, שהם רחוקים ממני. עכשיו הכל, אני עושה אותו לבד בעצמי.
זה נותן לך את העצמאות.
יש לי אפשרות אפילו להזמין פיצה הביתה.
It identifies your face, and with the head movement, you control your cell phone. Another example is AbiliSense by Erez Lugashi, a graduate of our second cohort. Erez is an amazing example for someone who initially focused on a minority subgroup in the population, hearing impaired people in a high level, and he developed a system that can identify sounds and make you aware of them through different kinds of alerts. But later on, he discovered that it's so relevant to so many different kinds of populations, such as the elderly and different people just like me and you that wants to be aware of things happening in their surroundings. Perhaps our baby cries in the second room. Perhaps there is a smoke alarm. So there's a sensor sits in your room, identifies the sounds, and sends alerts to any IoT device that you can choose. And the last example is Inity. Inity develops a digital platform for healthcare professionals to match, to find and match assistive technology to anyone who needs it. So it's a huge database and it also contains a matching algorithm with machine learning system. And I think it may have a very long-term effect on healthcare professionals, but also the end users in the end. So what we've seen today is 3 types of innovations from different fields, impacting people with disabilities, using technology, addressing this 15 to 20% of the market that is, we think it's a niche, but it's actually, it's us in a few years, you know, it's our families, it's our friends. What we're doing today, I'll just finish with 2 words. Today we're focusing on what I've shown you before, on building the ecosystem, because we understand it's not just one program or one accelerator. It's a very wide perspective, joining together different forces from government, from NGOs, from civil society, from academia, and globally, talking globally, because as we see it, Israel is just a beta site. So that's it. Thank you very much for listening. Hope it was interesting.